Hey, this is Michelle, just putting something in at the top of the show. So, when we recorded this episode, we didn't know what the results were going to be because we recorded the episode a good 3 hours before polls shut. So, we decided to make this episode a prepare for the worst, hope for the best episode, where we would tell inspirational stories of trans people, and we would try and give some positive words and get some positive stories out there so you could leave the episode with a sense of hope for the future. Well, whilst I've been editing the episode, the results have been coming in and they don't look good, and I've been seeing a lot of scared trans people out there in social media land, and to be quite frank, I'm quite scared too. I've been putting on a brave face for a lot of people, but the truth of the matter is I'm fucking terrified. But there's something that I've learned whilst doing this show, and I've said it before on this show and I'll say it again now. In all the time making this show, I've been astonished at the resilience, diversity, and just how fucking incredible so many gender-variant people are. I don't say this lightly. I think the people alive in the UK trans and non-binary communities today are some of the best people who have ever lived. I have no doubts that we can weather any storm. It's going to be tough. Some of us may not even make it, but I know that we will persevere and we will come through this. Look at all of the fights in your own life that you have fought and won. A trans and non-binary person's life is defined by fighting against your body, fighting against so many people to just get the bare minimum of respect for your identity. There is nothing this government can do that can take away who you are. So I want you to make a promise to yourself that you're not going to stop. You're not going to let the despair win, not this time. We don't have time for despair. You got to reach out to your community now more than ever. You got to reach out to the people of colour. You got to reach out to the disabled people. You got to reach out to all the people who are going to get hit the worst in our community. And you got to look after yourself because, to be honest, we're going to need you. We're going to need every single person we can get for the fights ahead. I want to thank you for continuing to listen to this show. It is the privilege of my life to have an audience, even as small as this is, to have this platform and to be trusted in telling you what we think you need to hear. And we're going to keep doing it as long as we can. And I want you to continue doing whatever you do as long as you can as well. They can't stop us. We're not going back in the fucking closet. No fucking way. Alright, on with the show.
The category is What the Trans, darlings?
Hello, and a very time zone appropriate welcome to you, and welcome to What the Trans.
What the trans? We don't know currently who's won the election.
We do not. So you know that, and we don't. At time of recording, the polls are still open. So there's everything to play for. And it's anybody's game, and whatever else. But yeah, seriously, we have no idea. So this is going to be coming out on Friday, the 13th of December, probably around the same time that we know the election results. So that's going to be fun for us. In the recording of this episode, that's going to be absolutely tremendous. However, we still have interesting, snarky, fun insights to offer. But first, how are you? You alright, Michelle?
I'm alright. I did my duty and did my voting. I'd like to think that I have single-handedly saved the constituency of Streatham from Conservative rule.
Yeah. If you like, you can think about it like that, I suppose. But
Streatham is a very safe Labour seat. I basically went there because the two big parties in Streatham right now are Labour and Conservative. The Lib Dems were for a few years, but that sort of died off around coalition time.
oh gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, so I basically went there and I voted Labour because they were the most likely to beat the Conservatives. I did that with some reservations that I've got into before.
Yes.
The anti-Semitism concerns me, as it is real, and I don't care how many listeners we lose from us saying that, because seen a little bit of anti-Semitism in and around the social media whenever we brought this up, and we have lost followers on Twitter.
Oh.
Which is disturbing.
I didn't actually know that. That's a little bit disappointing, but never mind.
But the long and the short of it is, I voted for Labour today. I feel I've done my bit to, at the very least, protect Streatham from Conservatives. Although I would say that I'm arguably an anti-Conservative voter, not necessarily a pure Labour voter, yes. But how was your voting experience today?
Fine, yes. So it was at a school. Most of the signage had blown down because today has not been good for weather in the north. But yes, there wasn't anybody canvassing around outside, although a friend of mine who voted in a different constituency in Manchester said that there was like some very soggy Tories a few steps down the road from the polling station. It'll be fun if they like get a cold and or pneumonia and then the NHS isn't there because they've supported the Tories. That would be particularly good. It's like, oh, well, you caught a cold canvassing for us. I'm sorry, that's £250,000, please. Obviously, it wouldn't be much fun for everybody else, but for that guy in particular, I really do hope he appreciates the irony. Anyway, let's rattle on, because we are supposed to be keeping it short, and we've already spent 3 minutes wittering, so let's crack on, shall we?
Yeah, let's get some business done.
Yes, let's take care of, as you say, the business. And starting with some good news, kind of. So there's a Channel 4 show, a comedy show called The Last Leg, which has called for nominations for its annual Dick of the Year competition. And this year, the vast majority of nominations appear to be for current full-time transphobic nightmare goblin and former comedy writer Graham Linehan. Glenna. Previous winners of this most prestigious award have included the people that you would pretty much expect: Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Katie Hopkins, proving that women can indeed be dicks, and last year's winner, Jacob Rees-Mogg, The Haunted Pencil. Now, for those who don't know, Graham Linehan used to write funny television shows like Father Ted, and he wrote a bit of Big Train and Black Books and many, many others. But since 2017 has spent almost every hour of every day ranting on social media about how much trans people suck and how any move towards trans inclusion will be a quote-unquote danger to women. Now, this came to a head at the beginning of 2019, as we discussed in an episode, when he launched a campaign to deprive the transgender children's charity Mermaids of a £500,000 grant from the Big Lottery Fund. Now, he actually failed in that effort, while also inspiring the legendary Donkey Kong 64 charity livestream by Harris Brewis, aka H-Bomber Guy, that still makes us feel warm here on dark nights of the soul. However, according to Ireland's Gay Community News, Linehan is the clear frontrunner for this award, and honestly, we can't think of anyone better. The vast majority of the nominations also appear to be coming from cis people, with hundreds of cis women pitching in. The Last Leg will announce the nominations on their next show, which is also going to be on Friday the 13th of December, which is the same day that this episode comes out, and the same day we find out the election result. And it's almost a certainty that Linehan will be on the list. And we will share on our socials all of the details of how you can vote for this big bag of bastards as soon as we can. Now, in response to the number of nominations, Linehan's tried to make a joke about how the award is actually for having the best penis. But if you're having a bad day, or if the election results are not to your liking, and if you need a reminder that we do have many, many cis friends who want to show their support, then do check out the hashtag Dick of the Year nominee, and let your heart be warmed by all the allies standing up for us. I was thinking, Dick of the Year nominee, is that like where people rate dick pics? Like unsolicited dick pics?
I mean, I would be very interested in participating as a judge.
Of course, yes. That's A-okay. That's fine. I'm sure there would be a number of people that would actually volunteer to judge that, providing they could bring a level of sass and, you know, dare I say, cruelty to the proceedings. So, so this guy, right? This guy right here, Graham Linehan, is... I think that, are you alright, Graham? Because I really do think there's something wrong with him. I think Graham Linehan's just kind of going about this in completely the wrong and a really weird sort of a way. Vic Parsons, who was a journalist for Pink News, actually approached Linehan's agent for a comment on a story, and Linehan's reply was actually to tweet a picture of Vic's face out to his followers, which is, I feel, objectively a bit of a weird thing to do. It's like, hey, a journalist contacted me, here is their face. You know, like, what?
It's a very, very strange move. I think he was trying to make the point that they, them pronouns aren't a thing or something, but I don't know. It just looked really bizarre, especially because Vic Parsons has a perfectly ordinary and quite lovely face. I don't understand what the point was. I think that's just... I don't know. I think the man who wrote funny things like 30, 20 years ago, and the man that is now today just sitting on Twitter all day being obnoxiously awful, they're not the same person.
Yeah. It's kind of upsetting, really, to have him, you know, because you can kind of pretend he didn't write anything, but it's upsetting when you watch something like a bit of Black Books or Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, both of which are quite popular in this household, and he's occasionally in an episode, and it's like, ugh, that's disappointing.
It is, but you know what? It was something I just stumbled upon a few days ago, actually, on Twitter. Dylan Moran, who was a star of Black Books and probably the head writer, like sort of the guy who was very much at the heart of that show. Apparently, about a year ago, he, at one of his stand-up gigs, basically spent half of the set defending trans people from the media onslaught on stage. And it was noted on Twitter that his Twitter account is not following Graham Linehan.
Yes, well, I mean, why would you? There's nothing there that's particularly interesting in comedy terms anymore. It's just kind of the rantings of someone who's really kind of lost it.
So because they are not connected on Twitter, although Dylan Moran isn't exactly the kind of person who probably knows or understands or cares about Twitter in any which way, so there's this complete conjecture that the two aren't necessarily close.
Really? Yeah.
So that has made me feel a lot better about watching Black Books again. But anyway, I had a very, very interesting interaction with Mr. Graham Linehan recently.
Yes. Go on.
If you're that interested, you can scroll back through the podcast Twitter account. I don't tend to make a habit of replying or commenting on things that Glinner had posted, but this time he did a thread about what people have you lost because of your turfy bullshit views.
Yes, I saw this one.
And the results were just too funny and too tragic and awful, so I just had to do a tweet just like, so what you're saying is being a bigot has lost you people. And he did a whole other thing on another thing too. But basically, we sort of got into a thing where Glenn started replying at me saying, I don't believe that all trans people are garbage, but the vast majority are. I can't remember exactly what he wrote, but it was something around that. And it landed on the point that he didn't believe that he was a transphobic bigot because he liked two trans people who are turfy nightmares.
Awesome.
And you aren't transphobic if you believe that the vast majority of trans people are garbage.
Got you.
If you like two of them. So I put that to a poll on the Twitter.
Yeah.
And I put to the public, so can you be a transphobe if you think that the vast majority of trans people are garbage, but you like two of them? And obviously, out of the 400 odd voters, 90% said, yes, Glinner is a bigot for this reason.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's the same as that, oh no, I can't be racist, I have, like, literally one black friend kind of thing. You know, it's that argument just being repurposed.
Yeah, I literally tweeted to him, you're doing a Nigel Farage here, my friend, and then he just stopped replying.
Oh dear.
He just vanished.
Yes.
But I'm not going to make a habit of talking to that man because I find him gross and odious, and I was very, very surprised he even saw my tweet, let alone replied to it. But anyway, Glinner is going to be probably Dickhead of the Year, which I think will be an awesome way to round out the year of 2019 and this decade.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it would certainly be appropriate in a number of ways. Anyway, enough about him. We've spent enough time on him. Let us move on. What's up next? Oh, this is good news as well, isn't it, actually?
Yeah, there's some good news in this episode. Like, I think mainly because the election has sort of distracted all of the usual journalists and stuff away from trans issues for a bit. We've actually been able to look through all of the noise and find happier stories a lot easier than we normally would.
Yay!
So, yeah, US dictionary company Merriam-Webster has declared that their word of the year is the amazing, fantastic singular pronoun they. Back in September, Merriam-Webster updated their online dictionary with hundreds of new words, but also added the following to their they entry. Used to refer to a single person whose gender identity is non-binary. This appeared to annoy pretty much every transphobic asshole from here to everywhere, as one of the many things they would say in an attempt to shit on non-binary people, whilst being too fuckingly cowardly to just admit that they were bigots, was to say, but they is plural, blah, blah, I am the worst person ever, blah, blah, blah. That's an exact impression of someone I met down the pub.
I've literally heard people say that. No, it's a good impression. Carry on.
It has been reported that this move was due to several spikes in the number of times people looked up the definition of they on the Merriam-Webster... That's a tongue twister.
It is, isn't it? On the Merriam-Webster website. The Merriam-Webster website. Nice. Nailed it.
Yep, got there in the end. Was up 313% compared to 2018, and these spikes came around the times that Sam Smith, British pop star and owner of amazing eyebrows, came out as non-binary, as well as when non-binary model Oslo Grace came to prominence at the beginning of the year. Talking to the Associated Press, Merriam-Webster's editor-at-large Peter Sokolowski said that the use of they as a singular pronoun is here to stay. So take that, grammar-based transphobes.
Good. Excellent. And it's like people saying, oh, well, is it in the dictionary? Yes, it is. But then it's like you're saying that the dictionary is the kind of etched-in-stone tablet for what is and isn't a word. And it's like, well, actually, the dictionary is updated. It evolves with time. You know, and this particular one, they as a singular pronoun, has got a long and storied history, hasn't it?
People have used it as a singular pronoun in my lifetime way before even I knew what non-binary people were, you know? Like, it's not that unusual in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, I love this move from Merriam-Webster to just be like, right, this is a thing now. We're going to update our terms.
We're doing this.
And it's not exactly that unusual, and it's really good to see Merriam-Webster and several other big publishers of dictionaries and masters of the
tomes, yes.
Masters of the tomes being like, all right, this is a thing people are doing now, so it's a thing. Because that's what language is. Language is adaptable. It's a way to communicate ideas, and new ideas come up as humanity exists for longer and longer. More ideas come up, more words need to be redefined and changed and evolved to reflect how society is, so you can communicate better in it.
Yeah, that's how it works. And I really love the name of this organisation because it sounds like a woman called Merriam-Webster. Ah, Ms. Webster, how nice to meet you again, kind of thing. You know, Miriam.
Merriam-Webster.
Yeah.
Keeper of the words.
Yeah, but it's Merriam-Webster, isn't it? But they put a thing on their blog about this, didn't they? Where they're talking about they as a singular pronoun, and they've written, and obviously this is in exquisite English because they do a dictionary, we will note that they has been in consistent use as a singular pronoun since the late 1300s, and that the development of singular they mirrors the development of the singular you from the plural you. Yet we don't complain that singular you is ungrammatical, and that regardless of what detractors say, nearly everyone uses the singular they in casual conversation and often in formal writing. So that was my bit that I put on the end of it. The raspberry was not Merriam-Webster, that was me. Yeah, I know we've just made the point that language changes and evolves over time, and then we've turned around and immediately made the case that we've been using this for nearly 1,000 years. 700 years, which is nearly 1,000.
Well, there has been an adaptation to the way they has been used, but it's been, but to explicitly evolve it to reference non-binary people was what I was going for.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Good. More of this sort of thing, please.
And we will obviously keep you up to date on the latest developments of the English language when it comes to transgender people. I'm afraid that we won't be able to keep up with the developments of trans language in other languages because me and Ashley only speak one language, but we will work on that. By the next episode, we promise that we will be able to speak at least 3 to 4 languages each. I've said it now, we have to do it.
Oh man, but I was gonna relax this weekend and everything. It's my dad's birthday. Anyway, right, okay. 3 or 4 languages, no problem. Well, I've got 20 minutes. Sounds fun, but I particularly enjoy the part where you said that we will keep you up to date on all the developments in the English language, and it's like, Jesus, that is such an ask. But
relating to trans people, relating to trans and non-binary people, that is. We cannot.
It's a bit.
We cannot become what the dictionary now. We've been around too long under this name.
Untitled Dictionary Podcast. All right. Anyway, let's just carry on. And what's the next thing? Which is also a good thing.
Our last bit of news this week is a quickie.
Sorry. Carry on.
This is about a child, Ashley. Can we have some decorum, please?
No.
So finally, it's happened. The Marvel Universe has a trans superhero. Sort of. As part of the new Marvel Hero Project series on the new Disney Plus streaming service, which isn't out in the UK yet, but it will be out next month, Marvel have produced a one-shot comic about an incredible trans kid based on real-life trans youth activist Rebecca Bruizov. Rebecca first came to prominence when a picture of her holding a sign saying, "I'm the scary transgender person the media warned you about," went viral. As it should, because that is an awesome picture. Link in the description. I will link to that and all this and all the other stuff that's coming up. But she has since made a name for herself as an incredible activist, being the public face of trans kids in America in a big way. And to top off an incredible year for her, she has now been officially added to the Marvel Universe canon as the Amazing Rebecca in her own legit Marvel one-shot comic.
Woo!
So check the link sheet. We will link to the comic. I've read it. It's adorable. It's too short. I want a graphic novel about Rebecca. I want a whole maxi run. I want this to be basically, I want her to become part of the next Watchmen is what I want. MCU movie, I want all of the things. The Amazing Rebecca needs to be bigger. Go to the link in the description, read the comic, and then start an online campaign or something. Make that real.
Yeah.
Because I think that the MCU needs a trans superhero, and Rebecca, she is so fucking adorable. She makes me want to have kids. Which is weird because I don't want to have kids.
No, you don't.
But if I did have kids, I want them to be like her.
Yes. Yeah, just legit pretty inspirational. And that's a word that I find it quite difficult to say, but it's like, wow, she's just, knows herself, is out there doing the thing. It's astonishing, really. So yeah, props. And now she's a superhero. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and with that, she's going to get a lot of crap. A lot of crap that someone her age or anyone alive ever in any point in their life shouldn't get, because right now in the States they've got this whole thing where sort of the trans kid debate that's been going on here for what feels like 10,000 years has really hit in the States lately. There's been a lot of bullshit there, and with the release of this comic she's sort of been tied up with it.
Yeah,
which isn't going to be great for her. She is basically putting herself out there at a time which is incredibly hostile to be any kind of public trans person, let alone a trans child. And she is changing minds, winning hearts, and taking names and kicking ass. And God bless Rebecca.
Yeah, all that
if
stuff.
there is a God.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other question, which we'll leave for another episode, because I'm sure we can, we'll have an answer for you about that in 2 or 3 weeks.
I think that would make a really good Christmas episode.
Is there a God?
Was Jesus real?
Anyway, cool, awesome, and that's the news. Actually, we thought we'd keep it reasonably chipper and positive this week, because honestly, we've done the whole everything is terrible part, and you kind of get a bit sick of that. Anyway,
that is an excellent segue, getting away from the nightmarish cul-de-sac that will be an existential conversation about the existence of God. Let's move right along to the meat of this episode. So we were faced with a conundrum when putting this together, because the way that our new work rota around the podcast works is that we don't know who has won the election at time of recording, as we mentioned at the top of the show.
We do not.
So it was very, very hard for us to think about making a show that would make sense in a Corbyn-led world or a Johnson, I forgot our policy on the show, racist liar and Prime Minister Boris Johnson world. We don't know what the world is going to look like tomorrow. So it was very hard for us to think about what kind of show to do. So we decided to go in assuming that the worst has happened. Boris Johnson has secured a majority and will be Prime Minister for 5 years or up until he keels over and dies, which hopefully will happen sooner rather than later. And we want to fill you, our listeners, with hope. We want to tell you the stories of some amazing trans people who have overcome incredible adversity and remind you all that whatever is going to happen for the next 5 years, the trans community has endured already and will continue to endure. So hopefully you'll hear these stories and feel a little bit more chipper about the state of the world. Obviously, if Boris Johnson has been kicked out of office and the Tories are well and truly out of office, then we will have egg on our face, but it will be the most delicious, amazing egg of our lives.
Free range from an allotment.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So, if we are wrong, would love to be wrong.
Yeah, I cannot wait to be wrong about this, but yes, just in case we're not.
We're preparing for the worst whilst hoping for the best. So, the first person that we wanted to highlight to you today as a trans hero who has stood up against bullshit and won is the mighty Sylvia Rivera. So, Sylvia Rivera was a Latina gay liberation and trans rights activist who you may have heard the name of in passing, usually mentioned in the same breath as her friend Marsha P. Johnson. She died in 2002 of liver cancer at the age of 50, but during her short life, she was present for some of the most pivotal moments in American LGBT history, including the founding of the Gay Liberation Front in the States, the Stonewall riots, and all the other stuff around that time in American gay lib history.
Indeed. Along with Marsha P. Johnson, she founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, which is just wonderful, which operated out of several flats in and around New York. The group's aims were to fight homophobia and transphobia in all of its forms, but with a focus on intersectional issues around race and gender identity issues. Rivera had a lifelong history until the day she died of fighting for gay liberation, but often found herself at odds with people who could be called gay assimilationists, who aimed to insert LGBT people into, as it were, straight culture. The Mattachine Society is a good example of that.
Yeah, she fought in the community for the rights of those many of the white middle-class members of the community wanted to leave behind. Prisoners, people of colour, sex workers, the usuals, you know. She was often mocked in the community and was told to stay out of the spotlight as her aims would make them look bad, something that never ever happens to trans people today.
No, indeed. So we have a clip of Sylvia Rivera, where she makes her thoughts quite clear about how the white, middle-class assimilationist community sucked when it came to everybody else in the gay liberation movement. Let's play the tape from long ago.
I've been trying to get up here all day for your gay brothers and your gay sisters in jail that write me every motherfucking week and ask for your help. And you all don't do a goddamn thing for them. Have you ever been beaten up and raped in jail? Now think about it. They've been beaten up and raped after they haven't spent much of their money in jail to get their cell phones and try to get their sex change. The women have tried to fight for their sex changes or to become women of the women's liberation. And they write STAR, not the women's group. They do not write women. They do not write men. They write STAR. Because we're trying to do something for them. I have been to jail. I have been raped and beaten many times by men, heterosexual men that do not belong in the homosexual shelter. But do you do anything for them? No. You all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I will not longer put up with this shit. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all? Think about that. I do not believe in a revolution. But you all do. I believe in the gay power. I believe in us getting our rights, or else I would not be out there fighting for our rights. That's all I wanted to say to your people. If you all want to know about the people that are in jail, and do not forget Bambi Lamore and Dora Marks, Kenny Messner, and other gay people that are in jail, come and see the people at Star House on 12th Street, on 640 East 12th Street, between B and C, apartment 14. The people that are trying to do something for all of us, and not men and women that belong to a white middle class, white club. And that's what you all belong to. Revolution now! Give me a G! Give me an A! Give me a Y! Give me a P! Give me an O! Give me a W! Give me an
So apologies about the sound quality there. That was taken from a very, very time-appropriate 1973 camera, as this was from video footage taken in 1973 at a Pride Liberation rally in Washington Square Park in New York City. And you can hear from the boos up front that she came on not exactly thought of fondly by the more mainstream, or at least attempting to be mainstream elements of the queer community at that time, but she won them round because she was such an amazingly powerful speaker. Like, she was screaming, and yeah, I love it. I sometimes listen to this when things get particularly grim, and I'm just like, yeah, you know what, if she can do the thing, then I could maybe do the thing, because I've had it a hell of a lot easier than Sylvia Rivera. Like, she was, mixed race, born into poverty, homeless for much of her life, like, never got a break, any of the breaks that I've had, like, and she fucking owned it right up until she died. She was incredible. I imagine that you were saying before we were recording, Ashley, that you actually don't believe that Sylvia Rivera is a hero. Would you like to talk more on that?
Wait. Fuck you! I said no such thing.
So what do you think of Sylvia Rivera?
I mean, she was an absolute badass, frankly, and the name of the group, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, it's like, that's just perfect, frankly. And there's the whole conversation / debate / whatever about would Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera have described themselves as transgender in today's world? You know, was it the same thing? Was it the definition exists? And it's like, well, that's missing the point, really, because actually they were fighting for the rights of and the right to be for gender non-conforming people of all sorts, because they don't like a group of bigots on the street outside a pub after an England match. They don't just go, oh, excuse me, can I just check? Are you a bloke dressed as a woman, or do you call yourself a trans? It's like they don't bother clarifying it. They will just attack you. So it's like, to say that, oh, well, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera weren't properly trans women, so we shouldn't hold them, we shouldn't elevate them as such in the community. It's like, okay, no, you shut the fuck up, all right? Because they stood up and did the thing in the face of people like you. Now, moving on, I guess, to trans people stepping up in the wider world, and certainly much longer ago. Dr. Alan L. Hutt was a medical physician who was one of the first trans men to have a hysterectomy in 1918. But this isn't why we wanted to highlight him, because he was someone who fought the fights and he won. Although the story of how he actually managed to get transition-related healthcare procedures before women were allowed to vote is a fascinating one. Links are in the description. Do have a read.
Yeah, but the reason that Dr. Allen is a hero in regards to the context of this particular podcast is because he spearheaded the move towards using X-rays to detect early cases of tuberculosis. TB was a huge killer in the early 20th century and did not tend to show any symptoms until this vile fucking disease had advanced to the coughing up your insides till you die stage, which was bad.
That was bad, wasn't it? So he actually spent the majority of his life fighting against tuberculosis. In 1948, he was appointed as a director of the Connecticut State TB Commission and worked on a massive TB X-ray screening program that went on to inspire similar programs all the way across the US and saving thousands of lives. Basically, he was a boss.
Yeah, and he did all this even though he had to move frequently, as his transgender status was a source of controversy. This began in 1918 when a former medical school colleague outed him as transgender, forcing her and his wife at the time to leave Oregon and set up elsewhere. This was a pattern that repeated itself right up until the 1940s and was the main thing that contributed to his first divorce, because his wife basically had had enough of it, and who could blame her at that particular time? But he eventually remarried and all was well there, kind of.
But this guy, Dr. Allen, saved lives. He fought TB like it had slapped his kids, and he did all of that whilst being constantly hounded. He is a goddamn inspiration, frankly, so do check the links in the description so you can have the full story.
Yeah, like, you hear about, like, these days there's certain trans women that really help with the development of the mobile phone, but you don't really hear about the contribution the trans men have made to not just, trans communities, but, the world.
Yeah.
This guy has saved thousands of lives, and I'd never heard of him before today. I don't think many people have.
Indeed, but, they're out there. We are out there. We've existed and always have. That's kind of the point here. And even in the face of something awful, in the teeth of chaos, we can stand up and fight.
Yeah, and he did all of this when he was being hounded for being trans. Pretty much all his life, every few years, someone would find out and he'd have to move on. But he still did the thing he was passionate about, which was trying to curb TB all across the States. So if you feel that there is something you want to do in life, and your status as a trans and non-binary person is potentially going to hold you back or make it harder, Dr. Allen did it. And I don't think there's any reason to think that you can't either. Because, he was a very smart, genius doctor man. But apart from that, he was just another dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you want to do a thing, listener, go and do a thing. Go make a thing.
Yeah. Good note to end that particular fella on. And our final one, our last trans hero of awesomeness, is actually still alive in the here and now.
Not just still alive, but actually hasn't been alive that long in the grand scheme of things.
Is way more alive than you and I, yeah. This may not be somebody that you've heard of, which is a bit of a shame because she's an absolute hero. Emily Williams, who is an 11-year-old trans kid based in Liverpool who has been making waves, as they say.
She is most well known for facing Mermaid's If I Had a Voice campaign and starring in a 1-minute short that has been doing the rounds on social media. She is 11 years old.
She's also been speaking out about how nobody appears to be listening to trans kids, but are incredibly willing to talk about them. Again, she's 11.
She has also been speaking out on her own, doing press interviews and making speeches at the last 2 Trans Day of Remembrance services in Liverpool and appearing on stage at Pride in London this year. Oh, and she also took part in a meeting with Amnesty International that had members of Parliament in attendance where she spoke about Gender Recognition Act reform. She is 11 years old.
And subsequent to that, she was named one of 59 LGBT people who make the city of Liverpool a better, more inclusive place. A poll run by the Liverpool Echo, which, just while we're on the subject, is legit one of the best local papers in the country, and surprisingly one of the best papers that we have ever seen covering trans issues. So yeah, read the Liverpool Echo, and in fact generally just go to Liverpool because it's awesome. So
yeah, Liverpool is seemingly chock full of awesome LGBT people.
Yes,
but to top all of that off, and this one is the most incredible to me because I remember what I was like when I was 11 going to secondary school, and I was not anywhere near capable of doing anything like this. Her mum got in touch with us to let us know that Emily had just started an LGBT club at her secondary school, which has apparently already helped encourage other students to come out. She just started the school in September, has been there 3 months, didn't know anyone, and started this whole club. Again, 11 years old. She's 11. Do you know what I was doing when I was 11, Ashley?
playing a SNES?
Playing a NES.
NES, nice, old school.
I was playing Battletoads vs. Double Dragon with my good friend Jonathan when I was 11. That was all I was capable of doing. The kids today are so much smarter than I was when I was a kid.
But then the other reason that we wouldn't have been able to form an LGBT youth club when we were sort of at secondary school when we were 11 is because that was under Section 28 and we legally wouldn't have been allowed to do that. So the fact that, obviously I'm not saying that, Emily is, just taking advantage of the new circumstances. Absolutely not. It takes courage to stand up, particularly one so young. So yeah, nice one. Emily Williams for the win. For the will? No, that's rubbish. Stop trying to make puns out of other people's names, Ashley.
I mean, even today, to go to a new school and set up an LGBT club...
Like straight away.
Yeah.
As soon as you get to the school.
She would not have had any idea what the culture was at the school. She wouldn't have known what the deal was. She could have been setting that up with a school full of homophobes and transphobes for all she knew, but she did it anyway. That's incredibly brave. Incredibly so. Again, kids like Rebecca and Emily, they make me want to have kids, which is weird because, again, I don't want kids. But I want kids like them. If I'm going to have kids, I want little Emily's, little Rebecca's going out and basically making the world better, because there's a reason why I decided to stick Emily in this section with the renowned Sylvia Rivera, because in my eyes she is just as astonishing, because again, she's 11, and I don't say that to disparage people who are 11 years old. 11-year-olds are fucking great, especially these days. They're so much smarter than I was. But still, to deal with all the stuff of being a trans kid, putting yourself out there in front of the world, which is less than kind, to try and make things better for people like her, God, Emily's awesome. And if you are feeling particularly glum about the future, just know that Emily Williams is of the generation that's probably going to be, running stuff after you and I, Ashley, long stop being able to function as adults and are living in care homes somewhere. So I feel a little bit better about the world knowing Emily is in it. So thank you, Emily, and keep up the amazing work.
Absolutely. And that's a neat little segue, I suppose, into, the sort of last little bit. We're going to, I promise, we will stop ranting at you in a few minutes. But there's just one...
Well, they did download the episode to hear us rant. I think if they are sick of us ranting, it's kind of on them.
Okay, all right. You do raise a bit of a point there. But the thing is, though, I mean, even in the most kind of, utopian dream society, which we're sort of nowhere near that yet, it's like, how do we even get there from here? And all of which is a slightly high-minded and rather pretentious way of leading into what I wanted to talk about, which is basically whatever happens with the UK's election, whatever has happened overnight that we're not aware of, and you are, listener, we collectively, the trans community, the LGBT community, and I should imagine a number of other communities, we still have work to do. Even if the election results in something that is not a Conservative majority, that doesn't mean that we as a community can then say, oh, great, we're done then. Down tools, everyone, we can stop now. And since we're recording this before the polls have closed, we at this point have no idea what the political landscape of the UK is going to be for the next few years, or possibly more. But there is still some stuff we can talk about because it'll still be applicable on the other side. Certain things, particularly in terms of activism and campaigning for change, are still going to be valid unless the rules completely change in a terrifyingly undemocratic way, which obviously is possible. We know that the trans community has more than its share of people with a lot of anxiety about the state of things just now. I am one of them. Michelle is another. Most of the people I know. And to everybody who goes into that category, I'm sorry if all of this stuff, when I'm talking about activism, comes off as me demanding action from you. Like I'm saying, you there, go, punch a Nazi, right now, I must insist. Because we don't have the right to do that. I can't do that.
But I will say that punching Nazis is fucking cool, and we highly endorse the practice if that is your game.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Nazis, because there's a concept that I wanted to bring up, which has been mooted at other times in other places, and it's called internal emigration. In a society that you fail to recognise and you don't feel attached to, some people who don't either collaborate or resist will quote-unquote emigrate to the inside. This phenomenon's been seen quite frequently, but it was first studied in a certain amount of detail just after World War II in the surviving population of Germany. German citizens had watched as their democratically elected leader had turned himself into a dictator, begun persecuting Jewish people, and started a war. They hadn't left the country, but the country had left them. And so faced with it all, this overwhelming force of brutality that had taken over, a lot of people just turned inwards. Spent a lot of time talking pointedly not about politics, or dancing to music in air raid shelters, and generally trying their damnedest not to let it all in. And that's tempting. In the face of something horrendous, it's tempting to say, it's not my problem. I'm alright, Jack, screw the rest of you. And I'm guessing the LGBT groups of certain political parties have got this outlook. It's a bit narrow, maybe. We could say it lacks empathy. And for certain people, like trans people, just staying out of it isn't really an option because a lot of people decide to make it our problem. And this is going to be the case no matter what any election result brings. It doesn't magically solve problems overnight. Changing things is hard work and it's exhausting, and sometimes you just lose. It doesn't go your way and you've put in a lot of work that's failed. And it sucks. And unfortunately, you kind of just have to carry on. But what can we do? Even in the worst of situation that we might be in tomorrow, what are the things that could still be done to make the trans community's voice heard? To see that we're still being listened to, or that they're at least pretending to listen to us, because if they're doing that rather than actually listening, that tells us something in itself. But throughout the history of social movements, there have been certain things that have always kind of worked, and that's in terms of communicating externally, as well as in amongst the community that you're part of yourself. So stuff that always works and will continue to at time of recording is stuff like writing to your MP, or indeed going to meet your MP at a constituency surgery. I was chatting with Christine Burns, the editor of Trans Britain, who was involved with the campaign for the Gender Recognition Act itself before 2004. She was part of a group called Press for Change. And that was something that she pointed out repeatedly, was that the way they got that to pass through Parliament with such a majority was by having trans people and affected people go out to the constituency surgery to talk to the MP who represents them to say, look, you need to vote in support of this and here's why, etc. It depends on your MP. It depends if they're much of a listener. Some are obviously going to be better than others, but the fact is that process is there to be engaged with, and that's something that we can try and do, should theoretically still work. But you can also try and make things better within your own little corner of the community. And there's loads of ways of doing that. There really is. You can do some volunteering, or you could start something and spend your time voluntarily doing something. Several friends of mine got together in a bedroom a few years ago and started Action for Trans Health, you know, which went on to become very much its own thing. Like, so much of that is about building a community. The internet is amazing here. We can all talk to each other in a way that we just never could before. Whereas now trans people are more connected and organized and, you know, swapping notes, and, you know, we're able to do things that we just weren't 20 or 30 years ago. But yeah, and building community can be super important, and that's everything from going to somewhere that exists, like a group or a social group or a bar or a library or whatever, or if you don't see something that you like, you don't see something that represents you, there are ways to start that as well. You know, you could start a particular night at a local charity or venue, or volunteer to run a particular social group. If you like events, organise some fundraising events. Gigs are brilliant. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in a band and I want to play gigs.
I mean, they could do a lot worse.
Could do a lot worse.
Than Dead Pixel.
Indeed.
Go check them out on Spotify, they're great.
Thank you, darling. Thank you very much. Next gig for the Pixel is February, so that'll be fun. But we're not the first people to be facing problems like this in terms of social capital, in terms of recognition, in terms of not just being straight up discriminated against on the street and whatever else. You know, we're not the first people to go through it. And those people, like Sylvia Rivera and various others, have written and spoken about the things that they encountered, and we can learn from those things too. Again, the internet's brilliant. And you know what else is brilliant? Self-care. Self-care is amazing because we need to look after ourselves and each other, especially each other, because that is really important right now. We can't let them isolate us. They're going to try. People do try and do that already, you know, with 4chan raids and whatever else. And something that you see in the States a lot more are like groups of people mass reporting perfectly innocuous trans art content or whatever, simply because it's made by a trans person. We can't, you know, let's support each other in as many different ways as we can. And while you're doing that, while you're supporting your friend and hanging out, is, you know, be friends. Make sure to enjoy things. Don't give every scrap of yourself to a cause, even though it might be the most just cause in the world. And finally, we endure. Because we always have, and we always will, I think. And it's hard and it sucks, and it's kind of part of the narrative that trans people are here simply to suffer in screenplays and in books. But that's not the case at all. And we are all entitled to a life, which some trans people are very, very active in trying to change it, and some trans people are not. And both of them are fine, but let's just not all forget about each other.
Hear, hear.
But whatever happens, you know, whatever happens post-election, let's do it right. The problem is I can't even make any plans or suggestions because it's like, well, we don't know who's in, so we don't know what we're going to be needing to be up against. But you kind of hope that a particular blue party won't backslide and take rights away if they were to gain a majority, but at the same time, kind of indicated that they would. So
I mean, they can fucking try.
Well, yes, I think there's going to be... that would be very, very interesting if that was the outcome. But anyway, look after each other, look after yourselves, and, you know, we love you. Michelle and I, we love you. You're super, and thank you for sticking with us, and hopefully we'll all be still here together next Christmas.
I mean, I think we are all going to be here next Christmas. I plan to. I've got my self-care plan all set up just in case this has all gone a bit squiffy. I am basically going to watch a whole bunch of movies about fantasy things that I haven't seen in a while. Take a few days just to process, calm, sleep well, eat right, and then come back on Monday in time to start writing the next episode of this show, where the fight back will begin. I want you to know at the bottom of my heart that I truly believe that the trans community is incredible. That's one of the biggest things I've taken away from starting this ridiculous podcast with you, Ashley, that the trans community, the non-binary community, the people I have met through this podcast have been incredible. And even though the days coming may be terribly hard and may even kill some of us, I have no doubt that the trans community and the non-binary community will persevere and make it through. And whatever the Tories destroy, we can rebuild. Even if they do sell off all the NHS to American companies and whatever, there's nothing stopping us in the future from buying it back or just letting the contract lapse.
Or, and this is just a maybe here, by the way, if they start doing that, armed insurrection. But I'm just gonna sit over here very quietly now while we finish up the episode.
Yeah, you just said some words. You just said some words. That's all that was.
Very much so. Words that were definitely in jest, absolutely in jest. They were not, but totally. I was very much just having a laugh and a joke with my podcast listeners. Seriously, rise up. And nothing was meant in any way, and I apologize that you felt the need to be offended by it. Boomer.
I swear to God, like, in every other episode, you genuinely suggest armed insurrection. I don't know what to make of that. Are you okay?
Not every single episode.
No, I said every other episode.
Oh, right, okay. Is it that often? Yeah, it probably is. I mean, you know, literally, it could not possibly be any worse than what we've got right at the moment. So, on that note...
Yeah, we should probably draw this to a close before, like, somebody kicks in our door.
Definitely, yeah.
Thank you very much for listening. Whatever the world looks like where you are right now, all is not lost. We will make it through.
Goodbye, everybody. We'll catch you next week.
Yep, see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye.